I'm Rachel. Welcome back to my kitchen. Today we're going to be making stuffed delicata squash. In your recipe kit, you received 2 of these beautiful little delicata squash, and we sourced those from Cascadian Farm and Long Hearing Farm, both in Rockport. So the first thing we're going to do is wash all of our produce. I've already done that. So now the second thing is we're going to cut the stem end off of our squash. The squashes are very hard, so this would be a good job for an adult. And then we're going to use the tunnel method to cut our squash in half lengthwise. Again, this is really hard, so you might want to have help. And I kind of go in with the point of my knife in the middle and then go down each side, and that makes it a little easier. So there you go. We're going to scrape out all of these seeds, and just like a pumpkin. And if you wanted to, you could actually rinse these off and roast them like you would pumpkin seeds, but I don't have time for that tonight. Okay, and that is our cavity that we're going to stuff with all of our good stuffing. So the first thing is to get your squash baking, because it takes a little while to bake. So I'm gonna put a little olive oil on each half, and then just get in there and rub it around, and rub it on the outside of the squash too. Just get it nice and oily. And I have, oh, now my hands are all greasy. I have a baking sheet, and I'm just gonna put my squash halves skin side up on my baking sheet and stick them in the oven at 375 degrees for about 30 minutes until they're tender. Okay. While those are baking, we're going to prepare our stuffing. First, I'm going to wash my hands because now I'm all greasy. Our stuffing is going to have a grain base, so rice, or in my case I'm using quinoa, and then some sauteed greens and onion and apple and craisins. And today, instead of onion, you have a leek. And we harvested these from the Farm to School garden, which is really exciting that we grew these for you. So you can see they're like a green onion, kind of like a really big green onion. And this is a really little one from the school garden. You might have gotten a bigger one, or you might have gotten half of one, depending on what we had. But to cut up a leek, you just cut the end off, and you cut the leaves off where they start to turn dark green. And then I use the tunnel to slice it in half lengthwise, just like my squash, so that it's flat. And then just chop it up like this. And leeks like to hide some dirt in their leaves, so be sure to wash them well. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do with our stuffing is heat a little oil in our pan over here. So I'm heating a little olive oil in my pan. We're going to start by adding our chopped leeks or onion and letting that saute down just a little. I'm going to saute that for about 3 minutes until it's soft. So my leeks are starting to look softer, and some of them are crisping up a little bit. So I'm going to add the next ingredient, which is my diced apple, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I'm going to do a little bit less. I'm only stuffing 1 squash, so I'm kind of having this recipe as I go. Some black pepper. The other flavor that we're going to add into this is sage. And we picked our sage from the school garden, which is, again, pretty exciting. Sage is an herb. It's kind of this fuzzy gray-green leaf. Now we're going to add our last few ingredients, which are cut up kale or a rainbow chard and our baby little, these are the little pieces of sage in there. I'm gonna add that. We're also going to add about a cup of grain, and I cooked some quinoa for this purpose, but we're including rice in your recipe kit. So I'm gonna throw some quinoa in there. Stir that all up. And a few craisins for color. If you wanted to, you could have added cooked sausage crumbles or cooked bacon to this if you wanted to add meat. Okay, so we're gonna cook that for about a minute, and then once our squash is done baking, we'll stuff it into the squash. Our squash is done, so I'm gonna pull that out of the oven. And the way that I know that it is done is I stuck it with a fork and the fork went in. And so there we are. So I'm gonna flip it over. It's very hot, so be careful. And we're going to stuff it. You want to pile your stuffing in there because that's the good stuff. There we go. Okay, and now I'm going to, should have done this first, but we're going to increase the heat of our oven to 425 and put these squash back in until they are just, if you have cheese on them, then you want to cook them until the cheese is kind of melty, but we're just going to cook them until the topping crisps up a little bit. About 10 minutes, and then they'll be ready to go. Okay, it's been 10 minutes, so we're going to pull our squash out of the oven again. And there they are. Two beautiful little stuffed squash. So I hope you enjoy this recipe kit and this cooking video, and bon appetit. I'll see you next week.